Hello and welcome to Science Talk. I am your host, Jim Massa. So, what I want to talk with you today is something I've been covering recently, and namely that as the oceans are warming, organisms are moving because the ocean is getting too warm for them, and they are moving to find more comfortable water to live in. So, in this particular video segment, I want to talk about blacktip sharks. And blacktip sharks are now showing up in Long Island. Oh, joy, right? So they typically migrate annually from Florida, to like summer range. And the new summer home is, Long Island, not the Carolinas. So blacktip sharks, they have the scientific name Cucurrinus limbatus. They're about 1.2 to 2.4 meters in length. They typically spend much of the year in Florida, and then come summertime, they head north to cooler waters. In the past, the Carolinas sufficed. Now, because the waters are warming, the waters off South and North Carolina are not cool enough. So they're going further north to find suitably cooler water temperatures. And lo and behold, they say, Long Island, that sounds good to us. So here we are. So Dr. Stephen Kajura, he's a shark expert at Florida Atlantic University, said these black tips are going way the heck up to Long Island in big numbers. So it's not just a couple of stragglers, it's large numbers. Basically, at the moment, 25-30% of the population. And as he says, it blows your mind when you see it. So what are the reasons for this? That they, going to Long Island as opposed to Carolinas? Well, Dr. Kajura basically hypothesizes that the Carolina waters are getting too hot for them. Perfectly reasonable hypothesis. Most sharks, including black tips, are ectotherms. Most sharks, not all. The great white is known to be an endotherm. So endotherms are able to maintain an internal body temperature. So they can do physiological, and that includes us, they can do physiological things to, if it's too cold, to restrict flow to the extremities and to the peripheral areas. And if it's too warm, mechanisms in place, like the capillaries getting closer to the surface, dilating a bit to dissipate heat, to control internal temperatures. Ectotherms don't have that ability. They can't cool down. On the same token, this is why you see turtles sitting on a log. The ectotherm, it's in the morning, it's a little too cool for them to move around, so they sit on a log, they bask in the sun. The sun literally warms them up and gets them going. Well, on the same token, if it gets too warm, then the organisms cannot cool down. And when you're an organism that lives in the water, it makes it more difficult. Because again, specific heat of water. I mean, a turtle walks around on land. Oh, it's a little warm. They can take a dip in the water to cool down for a little bit. A fish can't do that. So these ectothermic sharks can't cool down, right? Like mammals do, as I just described. A small change in ocean temperature can cause them to overheat. And by the way, we're seeing this with the salmon in the Pacific. Salmon aren't found where they typically used to be found because the oceans have gotten too warm. They're moving around. Some of the more demersal fish, the fish that they're not on the benthic, not on the substrate, but they're deeper than pelagic. They're still an open water fish, but they're like a layer down or so. You have pelagic near the surface, then you have demersal underneath them. Species like the cod and pollock, even those layers are getting too warm for them, and they're going deeper. Now, the problem with that is, as they move about to try and find a comfortable temperature range, they may not be able to find food. Another possibility that Dr. Kajura hypothesizes is that the fish the sharks eat are also moving due to the warming waters. So even their prey items are like, well, it's too warm here, we're out of here, and the sharks could be simply following them. It could be both. It could be one or either one, or it could be both. So temperatures along the Atlantic seaboard are changing rapidly since 1960. So we have a 60 years record here. Temperatures of the waters between Cape Hatteras, North Carolina, and the Gulf of Maine have increased by 2 degrees C, 3.6 Fahrenheit. That is significant. Again, I keep going back to specific heat of water. That is a lot of heat energy that has been absorbed. Whether they're moving themselves or whether they're moving because their prey are moving, either way, it's a temperature-driven phenomenon, Dr. Kajura said, with the same end result. So, are they adapting? Sounds like it, looks like it. Okay. So, what does this mean now if you have a bunch of blacktips hanging off the Hamptons, right? Well, we got people up there, and people like to splash in the water in that time. So, and blacktips, by the way, they can hang out in shallow waters, unlike a great white. And so there's going to be probably more encounters with humans, and probably won't be any fatalities, but if you got bit by a blacktip, it will hurt and there will be damage. And then, of course, once you get that blood in the water, then the dinner bell, the feeding frenzy is on. So this has potential. And of course, like everything else, it's always the animals that suffer through no fault of their own. So that does have me concerned about human-shark interactions on the increase. But here we have, a documentation. Obviously, there's been other studies been documenting this, but we have more evidence that the warming oceans are driving organisms to move from their typical range. So there you have it. Another example of how we're changing the planet. Thank you for your time. Hello, folks. This is Jim here with Science Talk, asking you to please subscribe to my channel and to inform others of my channel and of the work that I do. Please share to social media platforms that you use. Also, as a reminder, don't forget to click the bell so that you know when I load up more videos. Finally, I ask that you support the work that I do by becoming a patron at patreon.com. Details in the description box below. Thank you for your support.